Number 9. The Humane AI Pin. This was supposed to be the iPhone killer. The company was founded by ex-Apple engineers. They promised to liberate us from screens. You would wear a small square on your chest. It used a camera and voice AI to help you. It even projected a laser menu onto your hand. Investors poured $230 million into this. They believed it was the future of computing, but when it launched in 2024, it was a disaster. The device cost $700 plus a subscription. It was incredibly slow to answer simple questions. The laser display was invisible in sunlight, and the battery pack literally overheated against your skin. Tech reviewers absolutely destroyed the product online. Marks Brownlee called it the worst product ever. That one review basically killed the entire company. It turns out people actually like their screens. We like typing and reading silently in public. Talking to your chest makes you look insane. Sales were so bad they are hard to believe. They sold fewer than 10,000 units total in 1 month. Returns actually outpaced new sales. They had more people giving it back than buying. The charging case was even recalled for fire risk. A $200 million company sold for scrap parts. It proved that AI hardware is incredibly difficult. You cannot just glue ChatGPT to a lapel pin. Number 8. CNN Plus. This is the fastest media collapse in history. In 2022, streaming services were the gold rush. Every network wanted their own Netflix-style app. CNN decided to build a dedicated news streamer. They spent $300 million building the platform. They hired massive, expensive talent like Chris Wallace. They rented entire floors of skyscrapers for studios. The plan was to charge $6 a month. But there was a massive flaw in the logic. People watch CNN for live breaking news events, but cable contracts prevented showing live news there, so the app just had interviews and documentaries. Nobody wanted to pay for yesterday's news clips. They launched with a massive advertising campaign nationwide. Within a week, the numbers were catastrophic. They had fewer than 10,000 daily viewers. That is fewer people than a random YouTuber. Then a corporate merger changed everything overnight. Discovery bought the parent company and saw the data. They realized they were burning millions every week. They shut the entire service down immediately. It lasted exactly 30 days from launch to death. They spent $10 million for every day alive. It is now studied as a failure of arrogance. They never asked if anyone actually wanted this. Number 7. Sony Concord. This is the biggest video game flop ever. Sony is known for high-quality single-player games, but they wanted a piece of the live service money. They spent 8 years developing a hero shooter. It was designed to compete with Overwatch and Valorant. Insiders say it cost $400 million. That is more than the budget of Avatar 2. They built a massive studio just for this game. The developers had a culture of toxic positivity. Nobody was allowed to say the game was boring. They ignored the fact that the genre was oversaturated. When the trailer dropped, fans hated the character designs. They looked like generic Guardians of the Galaxy knockoffs. The color palettes were muddy and unappealing. It launched in late 2024 with a $40 price. Meanwhile, all its competitors were completely free to play. The player count on Steam was shockingly low. It peaked at around 600 concurrent players. That is empty for a global multiplayer shooter. You literally could not find a match to play. Sony panicked and pulled the plug immediately. The game was online for only 2 weeks total. They issued full refunds to every single buyer. They erased the game from everyone's digital library. $400 million evaporated in 14 days. It proved that money cannot buy a community. Gamers can smell a soulless product instantly. Number 6. The Ford Edsel. This is the original billion-dollar disaster. Back in the 1950 seconds, Ford was unstoppable. They wanted a car for the middle-class market. They spent 10 years researching what people wanted. They pulled thousands of people about their dreams. The company hype machine went absolutely insane. They declared it the car of the future. Dealers were forced to buy stock before seeing it. On EA in 1957, crowds gathered. Millions of people rushed to showrooms for the reveal. But when the curtain dropped, the room went silent. The car was widely considered hideously ugly. The front grille was the biggest problem. People said it looked like a toilet seat. Others said it looked like an old horse collar. It was also plagued with bizarre technical problems. The gear shifter was a push button on the steering wheel. The buttons would get stuck or jam constantly. Also, the trunk key was hidden inside the taillight. It was a gimmick that annoyed every single owner. To make matters worse, the economy crashed that year. A recession hit right as the car launched. Nobody wanted to buy a weird expensive gas guzzler. Ford tried desperately to save the sinking ship. They even gave away ponies to people who test drove it, but the public had already made up their mind. Driving an Edsel became a national punchline. Ford killed the entire brand after just 3 years. They lost $350 million back then. Adjusted for inflation, that is over $4 billion today. It remains the textbook definition of corporate hubris. Number 5, Quibi. This is how you burn $2 billion in 6 months. In 2020, Hollywood wanted to reinvent TV. The founder of DreamWorks teamed up with huge CEOs. They pitched a platform called Quick Bites. The idea was high-quality shows in 10-minute chunks. They raised nearly $2 billion before launching. They hired Steven Spielberg and Kevin Hart. They paid top dollar for premium original content. But the app had a fatal flaw built in. They wanted to revolutionize how we hold phones. They invented technology called turnstile to rotate video. You could watch in portrait or landscape seamlessly, but the executives did not understand the internet. They blocked users from taking screenshots or recording clips. This meant nobody could share memes on Twitter. In the social media age, this is a death sentence. The show clips could not go viral organically. Then they had the worst timing in human history. They designed the app for people commuting to work. They launched in April 2020 during lockdown. Nobody was commuting anywhere on the entire planet. Everyone was stuck at home watching Netflix on TVs. Nobody wanted to watch a movie on a phone screen. Subscriptions flatlined almost immediately after launch. They burned through their cash pile incredibly fast. 6 months later, they announced a total shutdown. They sold their library to Roku for pennies. It cost them roughly $10 million per day. They proved that throwing money at a bad idea fails. Number 4, the Samsung Note 7. This phone was literally a dangerous weapon. In 2016, Samsung was beating Apple. The Note 7 was reviewed as the perfect smartphone. It had a beautiful curved screen and great camera, but users started reporting a very serious problem. The phones were spontaneously catching fire while charging. At first, Samsung thought it was a small batch, but then reports started flooding in from everywhere. A Jeep caught fire and burned to the ground. A man's pants caught fire in a grocery store. The battery design was too aggressive for the shell. The positive and negative tabs were touching inside. The FAA stepped in with an unprecedented ban. It became a federal crime to bring one on a plane. Flight attendants announced it before every single takeoff. It was a public relations nightmare for the brand. Samsung issued a massive global recall of the device. They replaced millions of units with safe versions. But then the unthinkable happened a second time. The replacement phones started exploding too. A replacement unit caught fire on a Southwest flight. The plane had to be evacuated on the runway. Samsung had no choice but to kill the product completely. They sent fireproof boxes to customers for returns. They had to software brick every remaining unit. The total cost was over $5 billion. It took years for customers to trust them again. Number 3, Altria's Juul investment. This is arguably the worst business deal ever made. Altria is the company that makes Marlboro cigarettes. In 2018, they saw everyone vaping. They were terrified of becoming obsolete dinosaurs. So they decided to buy a stake in Juul. Juul was the hottest startup in Silicon Valley. Altria paid $12.8 billion cash. They only got 35% of the company. They valued the vape maker at $38 billion, but the timing was absolutely catastrophic. Literally weeks after the deal the FDA attacked, regulators cracked down on fruity vape flavors. They accused Juul of targeting teenagers specifically. Cities started banning the sale of pods entirely. Lawsuits started piling up from every single state. Juul sales fell off a cliff immediately. The company value went from the moon to zero. Altria had to write down the value of their investment. They wrote it down again and again every quarter. By 2023, the stake was worth nothing. They essentially lit $12 billion on fire. In the end, they swapped their shares for non-exclusive rights. They basically gave the company back for free. It destroyed shareholder value on a massive scale. It proves that buying the hype is dangerous. Even giant tobacco companies can get scammed by trends. Number 2, Mego Reality Labs. This is the most expensive pivot in human history. Mark Zuckerberg decided the internet was over. He believed we would all live in the metaverse. He changed the entire company name from Facebook. He poured billions into a division called Reality Labs. The goal was to build a virtual reality world. We would work, play, and socialize in VR headsets. But the spending was completely out of control. By 2024, they had lost $46 billion. That is more money than the GDP of some countries. It is more than the value of Ford Motor Company. And what did they have to show for it? They released a selfie of an avatar in front of the Eiffel Tower. The graphics looked worse than a Nintendo Wii game. The internet roasted Zuckerberg relentlessly for it. The avatars did not even have legs for years. When they finally added legs, it was a staged video. They used motion capture to fake the legs feature. Employees at Meta did not even use the software. Internal memos showed managers begging staff to log in. Investors were screaming for him to stop spending. The stock price collapsed, wiping out $700 billion in value. Zuckerberg eventually had to pivot to artificial intelligence. The metaverse became a ghost town of empty lobbies. It remains a $46 billion science experiment. Nobody wants to wear a heavy headset to attend a meeting. Number 1, Apple Project Titan. This is the ghost of the car industry. For a decade, rumors swirled about an Apple car. It was the worst kept secret in Silicon Valley. Apple started the project way back in 2014. They hired thousands of engineers from Tesla and Ford. They bought old test tracks in the Arizona desert. The plan was to build a fully autonomous vehicle. It would have no steering wheel and no pedals. The interior was supposed to look like a private jet lounge. They spent $10 billion on research and development. But the project was a mess of indecision. They changed leaders 4 different times in 10 years. They could not decide between making a car or just software. Building a car is infinitely harder than building a phone. The margins are thin and the regulations are nightmare. Meanwhile, the hype for electric cars started to die down. Competitors like Tesla were slashing prices to survive. In February 2024, Apple made the call. Tim Cook canceled the entire project abruptly. 2,000 employees were told to go home or switch teams. They shifted focus entirely to generative AI. 10 years of work resulted in 0 products. Not a single car ever rolled off an assembly line. It is the most expensive vaporware of all time. It proves that even Apple cannot do everything. Sometimes unlimited money cannot solve a physics problem. So what is the expensive lesson here? It turns out that cash is not magic. You can have billions of dollars in the bank. You can hire the smartest engineers on earth. But if the product is bad, it will fail. The market is the ultimate judge of value. If you enjoyed watching corporations burn money, you will love our video on lottery winners. We track down winners who lost everything. Click the video on screen right now. We will see you over there.